Welcome to the Chapter 30 Flipped Classroom. This flipped classroom is optional and it's meant to give you some context to go along with the worksheet that we're doing in class on the Americas. The biggest pieces of this chapter are continuation of themes that we've been learning about for this entire time period. First, we've got the theme of industrialization, and this chapter looks at these areas after independence movements, and we can see that industrialization really took off in North America, but in South America, their economies continued to be more export-based economies. There were also many contradictions and conflicts around Enlightenment ideas after independence in both North and South America, and Latin America, so Mesoamerica as well. But these conflicts mainly existed around the expansion of rights to women and other ethnic groups, or women and ethnic groups, such as in the North, African Americans, and in the South, indigenous groups and former slaves too, African Americans or Africans. And then lastly, migration was a major part of the labor systems, both in North and South America. So in Latin America, you'll remember that we've already seen an age of revolutions here. But the thing about these revolutions is that they didn't really expand rights as much as they did in North America. So you can see Mexico's revolution came in 1821. Central America's revolutions came in the 1820s as well, and then 1819 and the 20s below here. So the thing about this is that these colonies were ruled by their European home countries more autocratically. So they had less experience with self-government. So they had less like institutions like the United States did of self-rule. Also, under these early revolutions, the people who really gained were the Creoles. And there wasn't a lot of expansion of rights. Not very many people could vote. There was little property ownership expansion, and there wasn't a lot of liberty either, I guess you could say. And this resulted in a lot of conflict with indigenous groups because they did not gain in the original revolutions. So as part of this, there was a lot of tension between those in power and those not in power. And this led to many strongmen from the military gaining power in a very autocratic fashion. And we call those men caudillos. So these caudillos were generally Creoles, European descendants, and they were very militaristic. And Juan Manuel de Rosas is an example of a caudillo. Okay, so because of this, there were later attempts to reform. So, for example, in Mexico, their president, Benito Juarez, tried to limit the authority of the Catholic Church and limit the authority of the military and give lots of loans to people who were repressed, like the indigenous groups, so they could expand their economic capital. And also, he tried to limit foreign loans uh, and pay back debts. Well, not to pay back debts, but to stop payments on debts. Sorry. This got France really nervous, and they actually had a little sort of invasion of Mexico for a time. And then eventually the lack of reforms, the lack of success of these reforms led to the Mexican Revolution, which lasted from 1910 to 1920. And during this revolution, there was a general expansion of rights and land ownership. This revolution was very popular, especially in rural areas. It was led by Zapata and Pancho Villa, and although it was very popular, it never was able to take hold in urban areas. And in 1917, it resulted in a revised constitution, but not a complete change of Mexican government. And one of the things in this constitution was that land should be redistributed, which we're going to see is a very common theme in the 21st century or 20th century, to more peasants. So basically, you should increase land ownership. If you look at the pictures on the right-hand side, you're going to see kind of the nationalistic nature of this revolution. It really drew on Mexico's sense of being part of a culture or having a cultural and national identity. So actually some of these pictures are staged, but you can see like this little boy here carrying his musket with his bullets. And then you've got down here a bunch of women who are part of this more rural movement too. And this is part of a staged photo. So this was meant to rile up the people of Mexico. Economically, while Latin America did expand at this time period, they continued to be heavily reliant on foreign investment, which meant that many companies in Latin America had foreign owners. So a lot of the wealth wasn't staying in Latin America. It was going back to those home countries. And so that also gave those countries lots of influence with the caudillos. And this influence extended beyond economics to political influence. If you think back to big stick diplomacy that we saw with America. And the Monroe Doctrine was definitely a part of this expansion of North America, of the United States influence in Latin America. And so what results from this is that most of these countries rely on single commodity exports, or single commodities that they're exporting. And this is not a good thing to have a stable economy with. So in the Caribbean, they were mainly exporting sugar. In Mexico, copper, and in Argentina, beef. And this resulted in a lot of immigrants coming to these different parts of Latin America. This is because of the end of slavery that brought wage labor migrants to Latin America. Yeah, so, and these jobs were generally not high paying. So this was not, generally Latin American countries did not, most people in Latin American countries did not get rich from this foreign investment and export economies. The wealth was very concentrated. Okay, so the role of migrants, extending this, again, many migrants came for plantation work. This mainly had to do with sugar, but there were many products like that were also exported. One might be rubber, and wheat, both in South and North America. So many South Asians and East Asians came to work on these plantations, and because it was plantation work, it was mainly males which left women behind to take on different roles. Other areas where people worked were ranch workers. This is mainly in Argentina. You saw a lot of Italians migrating there for those reasons. Mine workers, this would be in Mexico and in Peru. And then there were small numbers of migrants who were landowners. Just to give you a specific example, you can see Brazil. Brazil's migration increased a lot from 1877 to 1903, and you see a large number of migrants, about 71,000 per year, and it was a dominant of Italians. And then from 1820 to 1876, you saw a significant number of Germans and Portuguese migrating there. You have to remember during this time period, continental Europe experienced a lot of turmoil. So you have to remember that there are some push factors as well as pull factors. And then in this slide here, we see where different migrants are going. So I just wanted to draw your attention to China, because they're going to Peru, Cuba, other areas in the Caribbean, and Hawaii and Peru with Japan as well. And the reason for this is, again, most of these laborers are going to work on plantations or some type of other commodity. In the next part of the PowerPoint, we're going to look at the growth of America.